My name is Allison Parker. I'm 32 years old, and I gave up my dream job as an interior designer to stay in Boise, Idaho, caring for my mom through her heart disease. For years, I poured my savings, tens of thousands of dollars, into her medical bills, home repairs, anything to keep our family afloat. I thought I was doing my part, holding us together. Then I found out my parents left everything, the house, the savings, every last cent, to my brother. My brother, who never lifted a finger, who burned through their money on failed ventures while I sacrificed everything. I was stunned, like the ground vanished beneath me. Then my phone pinged. A text from my mom. "The bill is due. Send $5,000 now?" I stared at the screen, heart racing. After all I'd done, they still saw me as their bank account. Then my dad called, voice sharp. "Stop being selfish, family comes first." I gripped the phone, my chest tight, and typed back 3 words that would change everything. "Before we dive into the story, tell me what time it is and which city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached." It was a quiet Sunday when I checked Mom's email. She'd been struggling with her heart condition for years, and at 60-something, her hands shook too much to sort through her inbox alone. I sat at her cluttered kitchen table in our Boise home, scrolling through a mess of spam and medical reminders, helping her clear out the junk. Mom leaned back in her chair, sipping tea, her face pale but calm, trusting me to handle it like always. For years, I'd been the one paying her hospital bills, fixing the leaky roof, keeping the lights on, tens of thousands of dollars from my own pocket, all while my dream of designing interiors for big city firms slipped further away. Then an email caught my eye. It was from our family lawyer, Paul, with a subject line that read, "Updated estate documents." My stomach twisted. I glanced at Mom, who was staring out the window, oblivious. I clicked it open, expecting some routine notice. Instead, it was a scanned copy of my parents' will dated just a month ago. My eyes scanned the page and my breath caught. The house, the savings, every asset they had, it was all going to my brother. Brandon, the guy who'd burned through their money on one failed startup after another, was getting everything. Me. At 32, after years of carrying this family, I got a single line. "To our daughter Allison, our gratitude for her support." Gratitude. That was it. I leaned back, my chest tight, like someone had punched me. Diane, Mom? Had no idea I was reading this. She'd always leaned on me, her reliable kid, the one who stayed in Boise instead of chasing my career. I'd paid $20,000 for her surgeries, $5,000 for the new furnace, countless smaller bills. And Brandon, he'd show up for holidays, flash a smile, and leave without a dime spent. Yet they chose him. My hands shook as I forwarded the email to myself, my mind racing. This wasn't just unfair, it was betrayal, plain and simple. I grabbed a notebook from my bag and started listing every payment I'd made for them. Hospital stays, $12,000 over 3 years. Home repairs, another $8,000. Even the grocery runs when Mom was too weak to drive. I scribbled furiously, each number a reminder of what I'd given up. My dream job at a New York design firm had slipped away because I stayed here for her, for them. I thought about confronting Diane right then, but her frail frame stopped me. She'd probably cry, say it was a mistake, but that email wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. I opened my laptop and dug deeper. The email thread showed Paul had sent the will to both my parents. They'd approved it, signed it, without a word to me. I pictured Brandon's smug grin, knowing he'd gotten away with it. He'd always had a way of charming them, spinning stories about his next big venture while I cleaned up their messes. I found an older email from Paul mentioning a prior version of the will. My heart skipped. Was there another document? I shot Paul a quick message asking for details, keeping it vague so he wouldn't tip off my parents. By the time I closed my laptop, the sun was setting. Mom was napping on the couch, her breathing uneven. I stared at her, torn between love and anger. She'd relied on me for so long, but this choice felt like a knife in my back. I wasn't just hurt. I was done being invisible. I saved the notebook in my bag, my resolve hardening. They thought they could erase my sacrifices. They were about to learn I wasn't going anywhere quietly. A few days later, my phone pinged with a text. I was in my Boise apartment sorting through design sketches for a client, trying to focus despite the sting of what I'd found in Mom's email. The screen lit up with her name. Her message was short, sharp. "Allison, the hospital bill is due. Send $5,000 by Friday." My jaw tightened. $5,000. Another bill, another demand, like I was their personal ATM. I'd been down this road too many times, paying for Mom's heart treatments, covering their utilities, bailing them out when money got tight. But after seeing that, something in me snapped. I typed back, fingers trembling. "I can't keep doing this. I've paid enough." I hit send, my pulse quickening, waiting for the fallout. Mom didn't reply. Instead, an hour later, my phone rang. It was my dad. I braced myself and answered. "Allison, what's this nonsense about not paying?" Stephen's voice was low-edged with that familiar disappointment. "Your mother needs you. Stop being selfish and think about family for once." Selfish. The word hit like a slap. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. "Dad, I've paid tens of thousands over the years. Surgeries, repairs, everything. I'm done." His tone sharpened. "You're done. You think you can just walk away? Your mother's sick and your brother's got his own struggles. Step up, Allison." I laughed, a bitter sound. Brandon's struggles. Chasing pipe dreams while I carried the family. "Stephen," I said, voice steady, "I'm not your bank. You're on your own." I hung up, my hands shaking but my mind clear. For the first time, I felt a spark of freedom mixed with rage. I paced my living room, the weight of his words sinking in. Selfish. After all, I'd given up my dream job in New York. My savings. My time. They had the nerve to call me that. I thought about Mom, how she'd sit quietly while I paid her bills, never questioning, always expecting. Diane, I corrected myself. Diane, who'd signed that will without a word to me. And Stephen, always quick to defend Brandon no matter how many times he'd failed. I sat down, staring at my phone, replaying the call. That word selfish kept echoing, but it wasn't me. It was them taking and taking until I had nothing left. I opened my laptop, pulling up the notebook I'd started. The numbers stared back: 20,000 for hospital stays, 5,000 for the furnace, countless smaller expenses. Each one a choice I'd made for them. But now I wasn't just angry, I was awake. I wasn't going to let them guilt me anymore. I saved the file, my resolve growing. They thought they could keep me in line with shame, but I was done playing their game. I leaned back, the silence of my apartment wrapping around me, and for once, it felt like I was breathing again. By the next week, my friend Megan forwarded me an email. I was at my desk in my Boise apartment, sketching a layout for a client's living room, trying to bury myself in work. The subject line read, "Concern about Allison Parker," and my stomach dropped. Megan's message was brief. "You need to see this." I clicked, and there it was, an email from Brandon sent to a group of my design colleagues in Boise. His words hit like a brick. "Allison's been unstable lately, missing deadlines, unreliable. I'd steer clear of working with her." Unstable. The word burned into me. I scrolled through the recipients, 10 designers I'd networked with over years, people I'd pitched projects to, shared coffee with. My hands went cold. I reread it, my eyes stinging. Brandon hadn't just sent a casual jab. He'd crafted a calculated smear, painting me as someone falling apart. I checked my inbox, and sure enough, 2 clients had canceled contracts that morning. One was a $6,000 restaurant redesign, the other a $4,000 home renovation. $10,000 gone in a day, and my reputation in Boise's tight-knit design community was taking a hit. I slammed my laptop shut, my breath shallow. This wasn't just Brandon being petty, this was him trying to ruin me. I called Megan. "Did you see who else was on that email?" I asked, my voice tight. She hesitated. "Yeah. There's a reply from Diane. My heart sank. I reopened the email, and there it was, a response from Diane, my own mother. I can confirm Allison's been struggling. We're worried about her. Struggling, I'd been the one holding this family together, paying their bills, keeping their house from falling apart. And now Diane was backing Brandon's lies, throwing me under the bus to my own colleagues. I scrolled further and found a forwarded message from Stephen, my dad. She's not herself. Best to avoid her for now. My parents, both of them, were in on this. I stood up, pacing my small apartment, my mind racing. How long had they been planning this? I dug through my emails, searching for clues. I found a thread between Diane and a local design group organizer, where she'd hinted I was unreliable at a recent event. Then another from Stephen to a mutual acquaintance saying I'd let the family down. They weren't just supporting Brandon, they were actively working to tarnish my name in Boise, a city where reputation is everything in my field. I pictured them sitting at their kitchen table plotting while Brandon typed that email with his smug grin. I sat down, my hands shaking, and opened my notebook. The numbers I'd written, hospital bills, home repairs, stared back, a reminder of what I'd given up. But this was a new low. They weren't just taking my money or my time, they were trying to erase my credibility, my livelihood. I thought about calling Diane, demanding answers, but what was the point? She'd play the frail sick mother card, and Stephen would lecture me about family loyalty. Brandon would just laugh it off like he always did. I texted Megan asking if she'd heard anything else. She replied with a screenshot from a local design forum where someone had posted about my unreliability, citing a family source. My blood boiled. This wasn't just an email, it was a campaign. They wanted me silenced, compliant, back in my place as the family's doormat. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I'd spent years being the good daughter, the responsible one, but for what? To be smeared like this. No more. I opened my laptop again, saving Brandon's email and the replies from Diane and Stephen. Evidence. That's what I needed. I wasn't going to let them bury me. I thought about my next move, my resolve hardening like steel. They thought they could break me with whispers and lies. They were wrong. I wasn't staying quiet. Not anymore. That Friday, I sat down with Megan. We were at a small coffee shop in downtown Boise, the hum of conversation around us fading as I showed her the email from Brandon. My hands were steady now, the shock of his smear campaign hardening into something else, resolve. Megan leaned forward, her eyes fierce. Allison? You can't let them get away with this, she said, her voice low but firm. They're trying to break you, but you've got the truth on your side. Go public. Show everyone who they really are. Her words hit me like a spark. For the first time in weeks, I felt a surge of clarity, like I could finally fight back. I nodded, sipping my coffee, my mind already racing with ideas. I'm thinking a live stream, I said. TikTok. I'll lay it all out, their lies, their favoritism, everything. Megan grinned, her encouragement like a lifeline. Do it. You've got this. That was all I needed, someone to remind me I wasn't alone, that my story deserved to be heard. We left the coffee shop and I headed home, ready to build my case. Back in my apartment, I spread out my evidence on the dining table like a detective. First, the medical bills. I pulled up bank statements highlighting every payment I'd made for Diane's heart treatments: $12,000 for hospital stays, $3,000 for specialist visits. Each receipt was a piece of my sacrifice, proof of what I'd given up. I scanned them into my laptop, organizing them into a folder labeled Truth. Next, the text messages. I screenshot Diane's demand for $5,000, my refusal, and her silence afterward. Stephen's call, calling me selfish, wasn't recorded, but I typed out a transcript from memory, every word etched in my mind. Then came Brandon's email. I opened the file. I'd saved his words, unstable, unreliable, staring back at me. I added screenshots of Diane and Stephen's replies, their betrayal, in black and white. But I needed more. I scoured my inbox for older messages, finding one from Brandon to Diane, casually mentioning how he'd talked them into changing the will. That was gold, a confession of his manipulation. I saved it, my pulse quickening with every click. This wasn't just about clearing my name, it was about exposing their lies to the world. I opened my design software, channeling my skills as an interior designer into something new: slides for the live stream. I kept them clean, professional, but undeniable. The first slide showed a timeline of my payments, dollar amounts in bold: 20,000, 5,000, 3,000. The next slide had Diane's text, the words "bill is due" in red. Another slide displayed Brandon's email, highlighted phrases like "unstable" and "steer clear." I added a screenshot of Stephen's reply, his words cold and calculated. Each slide was a brick in the wall. I was building a wall to protect my truth. I spent hours tweaking the visuals, making sure every detail was clear. I chose a simple font, stark white background, black text, nothing flashy, just raw facts. One slide summarized the will, quoting the line about my gratitude, while Brandon got everything. I added a photo of the house I'd helped maintain, the roof I'd paid to fix, the driveway I'd had repaved. It wasn't just money, it was my life poured into a family that turned on me. By midnight, I had 10 slides, each one a piece of my story, ready to share with the world. I needed one last piece: confirmation about the will. I emailed Paul, our family lawyer, keeping my tone neutral. "Can you clarify the history of my parents' estate documents?" I wrote. "I found a recent version, but I'm curious about any earlier drafts." I didn't mention the live stream. I didn't want anyone tipping off Diane or Stephen. Paul replied the next morning, promising to dig into it and get back to me by Monday. His response was professional, but I could sense he knew something was off. I saved his email, another piece of my arsenal. I leaned back, staring at my laptop screen, the slides glowing in the dark. Megan's words echoed in my head. "You've got this." I felt a fire growing inside me, a mix of anger and determination. Diane, Stephen, Brandon. They thought they could bury me with their lies, but I was done being their scapegoat. I closed my laptop, my plan set. The live stream was tomorrow, and I was ready to show Boise and maybe the world the truth about my family. The next evening, I went live on TikTok. I set up my laptop in my apartment, the slides I'd prepared glowing on the screen. My phone was propped up, camera on my heart, steady but fierce. I took a deep breath and hit go live. The viewer count ticked up: 1050, then hundreds, mostly locals from Boise's tight-knit community. "Hey everyone," I started, my voice clear. "I'm here to set the record straight about my family." I clicked to the first slide, a timeline of medical bills I'd paid for Diane: $12,000 for hospital stays, $3,000 for specialists. Comments flooded in. "That's insane. You paid all that." I moved to the next slide, the email about the will. "This is what my parents decided," I said, highlighting the line, leaving everything to Brandon. I got gratitude. He got the house, the savings. The chat exploded, emojis, shocked faces, people typing. "No way." I showed Diane's text demanding $5,000, my refusal, and Stephen's accusation that I was selfish. "I paid for years," I said, my voice rising. "But they called me selfish for saying no." The comments turned angry. "That's so unfair. They used you." Then came the kicker. I pulled up a text from Brandon to Diane, one I'd found while digging through my emails. "Don't worry, I talked Mom and Dad into the will change," it read. "They think it's best." I let that sink in, the chat going wild. He manipulated them. What a snake. I paused, letting the weight of his words hit. "This is who they chose over me," I said. Diane popped into the comments, typing, "Allison, you're twisting the truth." I didn't flinch. "Am I?" "Diane, it's all here: receipts, texts, emails." The viewers backed me up, drowning her out with "show more proof and she's lying." Brandon jumped in next, commenting, "This is a family matter. Stop airing it." I shook my head. "You made it public when you called me unstable to my colleagues." I shot back, showing his smear email. The chat went ballistic. "He did what? Call him out." I clicked through slides, each one a nail in their story. Diane's reply confirming I was struggling. Stephen's urging people to avoid me. The viewers were relentless, tagging local design groups sharing the stream. By now, thousands were watching, the numbers climbing fast. My phone rang midstream. Stephen. I ignored it, but he called again, his name flashing on my screen. I held it up for the camera. "This is my dad calling to shut me up," I said. The comments roared, "Don't answer, keep going." I finished the last slide, a photo of the house I'd helped maintain, and said, "I gave everything to this family and they tried to erase me. I'm done hiding." I ended the stream, my hands trembling but my mind sharp. The views hit 10,000, then 20, as clips spread across TikTok. Minutes later, Stephen called again. I answered, this time ready. "Allison, take that video down," he demanded, his voice shaking with anger. "You're embarrassing us." I laughed, a sharp sound. "Embarrassing you, Stephen. You and Diane backed Brandon's lies. You don't get to tell me what to do." He sputtered. "This isn't over." I cut him off. "It is for me." I hung up, my chest lighter than it had been in years. I checked TikTok. The live stream was everywhere, shared, stitched, reposted. Boise locals were tagging each other, calling out my family's betrayal. "Allison deserves better," one comment read. Another, "Her parents and brother are shameless." Diane and Brandon tried commenting again, but their weak excuses, claiming I'd misunderstood or exaggerated, were buried under a wave of support for me. The truth was out, and it was spreading like wildfire. My family's facade was crumbling, and for once I wasn't the one picking up the pieces. 2 weeks later, I was sorting through mail in my Boise apartment, the chaos of the live stream fading into a quiet hum. The envelope was worn, postmarked from a nursing home an hour away, with my grandmother Helen's name in shaky handwriting. I froze, my fingers tracing the ink. Helen had been in frail health for years, tucked away in a facility I'd visited when I could. I slid open the envelope, my breath catching as I unfolded her letter. Her words were steady, deliberate. "Allison, I've watched you carry this family for too long. Your sacrifices haven't gone unnoticed. Not by me." I sat down, the paper trembling in my hands. Helen wrote about how she'd followed my live stream, how proud she was of my courage. "You've been the backbone," she said, while others took credit. Tucked inside was another document, sealed with a lawyer's stamp. It was from Paul, our family lawyer, a copy of my parents' original will, dated 5 years ago. I scanned it, my eyes locking on the key line. "To our daughter Allison, we leave the house and our savings in recognition of her devotion." Me, not Brandon. I was the primary heir back then. My throat tightened, a mix of relief and disbelief washing over me. Helen's letter went on. She'd overheard Diane and Stephen talking during a visit, bragging about how Brandon had fixed the will to favor him. "He convinced them you didn't need it," she wrote, "that you'd always manage." My grandmother's words were a lifeline, confirming what I'd suspected. Brandon hadn't just inherited everything by chance, he'd manipulated Diane and Stephen, playing on their trust to cut me out. I pictured him, all charm and empty promises, twisting their minds while I was paying their bills. I reread the original will, Paul's signature clear at the bottom. He'd sent it to Helen at her request, along with a note. This was their first intent. I'm sorry for what followed. I leaned back, my mind racing. Brandon's text to Diane, the one I'd shown in the live stream, flashed in my memory. I talked Mom and Dad into the will change. It all lined up. Diane and Stephen hadn't just favored him, they'd let him rewrite their legacy, erasing my years of sacrifice. My hands clenched, the letter anger mixing with a strange calm. Helen saw me. Someone in this family finally did. I thought about calling Diane, confronting her with the truth. But what was the point? She'd deny it, or cry, or blame me again. Stephen would lecture me about loyalty as if I hadn't given enough. And Brandon? He'd laugh it off like he always did. I set the letter down, my decision crystallizing. I was done with them. No more calls, no more texts, no more guilt trips. I opened my laptop and blocked their numbers. Diane, Stephen, Brandon, all gone with a click. The silence that followed was heavy but freeing. I walked to my window looking out at Boise's quiet streets. For years I'd tied myself to this family thinking it was my duty. But Helen's letter showed me I'd been enough, more than enough. I folded it carefully, tucking it into a drawer with the original will. I didn't need their house or their money anymore. I needed peace. I picked up my sketchbook, flipping to a new page, and started drawing. Not for clients, not for them, but for me. The lines flowed, each one a step toward rebuilding my life on my terms. 3 months after the live stream, I walked past the old house. The Boise street was quiet, the familiar porch now marked with a foreclosed sign. Diane and Stephen had lost it, unable to keep up with medical debts and the mortgage I'd once helped cover. A neighbor I ran into told me they'd moved to a cramped apartment across town, their belongings packed into a single moving van. I stood there staring at the faded paint I'd paid to refresh years ago, feeling no triumph, only a hollow ache. They'd built their lives on my sacrifices, and now the house, my childhood home, was gone. I'd heard whispers about Brandon, too. His latest startup pitch had collapsed, investors pulling out after the livestream exposed his lies. Boise's tight-knit business community wasn't kind to someone who'd smeared his own sister to get ahead. A local cafe owner, someone I'd worked with on a redesign, mentioned Brandon had been turned down for a partnership. "No one trusts him anymore," she said. His charm, once his greatest asset, was worthless, now tarnished by the truth I'd shared. I didn't gloat, his downfall wasn't my goal, but I couldn't deny the justice in it. Back in my apartment, I opened a letter from Paul confirming the original will Helen had sent me was legally binding. The house might be gone, but the savings modest but enough were mine. I sat at my desk staring at the numbers. Years ago, I'd have poured that money into Diane and Stephen's debts, but not anymore. Instead, I contacted a local college, setting up a small scholarship fund for interior design students. I named it the Right Fund after Helen, who'd seen my worth when no one else in the family did. The first award would help a young woman from Boise chase her dream, just as I'd once hoped to do in New York. Signing the paperwork felt like a quiet victory, a way to turn my pain into something good. I leaned back, my sketchbook open to a half-finished design. For years, I'd measured my value by what I gave my family: money, time, loyalty. But they'd never seen it, never cared. The live stream, Helen's letter. The will they showed me, I didn't need their approval to know my worth. I'd spent too long trying to prove myself to people who'd never listen. Now I was building a life for myself, one where my choices mattered. I closed the sketchbook, a faint smile breaking through. I was free, not because they'd changed, but because I had. To everyone who's followed this story, thank you. Your comments, your support, they kept me going. I shared this not just to expose my family, but to remind you your value isn't tied to anyone's validation, not even those closest to you. If you've been through something like this, or if this story hit home, drop a comment. Tell me your thoughts, your experiences. Let's keep this conversation going.